What's the best piece of advice you've received?
I think it's be yourself. I think too many people are out there trying to be something else or somebody else.
Who is Eric Peterson? A world-renowned architect from the streets of Chicago.
Go-to drink?
Yeah, old-fashioned, which almost kind of describes me as well. I walked into the room and my hair stood on end and I was just like, oh my God, it was just like a moving experience for me. And
Eric was inspired by the great Frank Lloyd Wright. Eric knew that he was destined to be an architect. He started his own architecture firm in 2002 and has designed homes for high-profile clients, such as Baseball Hall of Famer Randy Johnson and actor Vince Vaughn.
Complete the sentence. If you weren't an architect, you would be.
I was the cool kid in the office with the American accent that knew AutoCAD. It was like the craziest thing. They paid me a fortune. American Institute of Architects has a figure that says 1% of the architects who go out on their own actually make it. 1% of those architects that make it are actually what you might call wealthy. Was able to get the golden ticket. I will be there with my son. An amazing experience that's been offered to me, and I can't believe it's going to happen. And she told Mr. Wright that she wanted a house that she felt like she could dance in every day. And then she paused and she almost kind of teared up and she says, to this day, I dance in this house. And we all our hair stood on end and we were just like, that was it. I'm like, that's what I want to do.
You know what it takes to sell real estate?
The art of putting the deal together.
I'm not doing this for the money. I'm doing this because this is my calling. I believe in it. I love it.
Try to master your craft and don't give up.
Even if the money's not coming in, just trust the process.
Because you're only as good as your team. I learned that the hard way.
Half of it is talent. The other half of it is what your people skills are.
Welcome back to the Let's Talk Development Show, where we dive into all things real estate, business, and lifestyle. My name is Max.
My name is Patrick. We're two Germans living in Arizona, doing all things real estate, development, investment, selling, buying. So if you're a seasoned investor, builder, whatever, join us on this journey. And looking forward to our guest today.
And thanks for tuning in. We have an amazing episode in store for you guys. We're super thrilled to talk to our guest today.
And before we start, like, subscribe, follow, share, and make sure that everybody that's not subscribed yet, hit the subscribe button.
So now in today's episode, Chicago native, who's an architect that started his own architecture firm in 2002, Phoenix Architecture. He has designed homes for high-profile clients like Baseball Hall of Famer Randy Johnson, actor Vince Vaughn, and golfer Phil Mickelson. His work has been featured in top-tier publications such as Wall Street Journal and Architectural Digest. From playing with Legos as a child, he now leads an award-winning architectural firm with offices in Scottsdale and Beverly Hills. And with that, welcome to the show, founder and president Eric Peterson.
Great, yeah, thanks.
So Eric, we'll get you started with a little warm-up here before we dive into some questions.
I'm set. Let's go.
Good, let's do it.
Quick answers, rapid fire.
Rapid fire. What music are you listening to?
Wow. Coldplay is pretty much in there, but I'm also an opera lover.
Okay.
And a Mozart lover. So it's my song playlist at the end of the year is pretty crazy. It goes all over the place. I sent over on the end of the year, what's that app?
Spotify.
Spotify, yeah. I
Yeah.
sent my playlist to my family at the end, and my whole family was like, "Are you kidding me? That's the craziest mix of songs we've ever heard." So it goes all over the place. I'm not really into just one thing, but my mix is pretty broad.
I love it. What was the first concert you've been to?
Well, this goes back a long time, but Michael Jackson. So I was a huge Michael Jackson fan and was really obsessed with him. I had every magazine article, this is before the internet. So, every article that was possibly ever published by him, I was video recording every music video. And I'll even admit I had a diamond glove, sequin glove. Yeah, it was pretty bad.
I love it.
Yeah.
So growing up, what was your favorite show then? So if you loved Michael Jackson, is there any particular show that you
Favorite
watched?
show? I mean, I really loved Brady Bunch. I mean, obviously the dad was an architect and he had that really cool mid-century modern house. Later in years, I was obsessed with Seinfeld and still obsessed with Seinfeld. I know pretty much every tagline and every episode. And but yeah, back in the day, really liked, catching the Brady Bunch and kind of
cool.
said, oh, well, that'll be me when I'm older.
When you go out for drinks or happy hour, what's your go-to drink?
Yeah, old fashioned, which almost kind of describes me as well. Everybody kind of says, yeah, you're kind of like an older man. Like even when I was a kid, people would say I had an old soul, coming from, thinking opera was kind of cool and just the things I was interested in was always somebody more mature than my age.
That sounds like my house playing Frank Sinatra and jazz pretty much all day.
Right. Frank's up there on my list too.
Redesigning an existing house or designing a new house?
Yeah, new for sure. I mean, existing houses, really back in the day, I mean, I got into architecture because of this old house and remodeling homes, and I used to just be obsessed with that show and would get graph paper afterwards and start drawing on it and like remodel a house just from scratch. But it's so difficult these days, and the expectations are maybe that's easier than a new house, but it's really much more difficult. So we love tackling new projects.
Is there any ancient architecture that you would like to visit that you haven't visited before?
Yeah, I mean, I have a pretty extensive bucket list. Hagia Sophia in Istanbul, Turkey, is like one that I am just dying to see. And, obviously the pyramids is something that, everybody wants to see. But Hagia Sophia has got like this unbelievable dome and the interior space. Yep. It's just obsessed me for years. And I'm terrified that some terrorist act or even earthquake is going to destroy it before I have a chance to see it.
Okay. What's the most used app on your phone?
Wow.
Can't say emails now.
Yeah, probably Instagram.
Instagram, yeah.
Yeah. I'm pretty up on
Pretty
Instagram.
active.
My wife's constantly screaming at me to get off it, and I'm like, "This is work." Which I'm sure is like you guys too, because I see you guys posting as much as I'm looking.
100%.
Two more things. What's the best piece of advice you've received? Pick one.
I think it's be yourself. I think too many people are out there trying to be something else or somebody else. And, certainly social media has done that. Like they see people on social media and they think they need to be somebody else. But being authentic and being true to your beliefs and who you are, especially in this day and age, I mean, it's just craziness out there. And people really see that. And I think that's what really draws people to me and our firm and what we do is because I'm just a true human that really loves and respects people and enjoys being with people. And I think that shows true.
Okay. Complete the sentence. If you weren't an architect, you would be?
A set designer. That's my true passion. It's really what got me into architecture. Originally was in my high school. I did the high school set designs for all of our productions, and we had a pretty professional drama department where I grew up. And it really even goes beyond that. My mother, who always watched the operas on the Met on PBS, would call me in and say, "You got to see this set. I know you don't like the opera because back in the day I didn't, but she wanted me to see the sets." And they were mostly Franco Zeffirelli sets, and he was an architect. And he's become sort of like a bit of an idol to me to follow in his footsteps. And eventually it'd be wonderful to retire from this type of architecture and become the world's greatest opera set designer and travel the world to the greatest opera houses and take on that career. But I think by the time I'm ready to do that, opera sets are going to be something like holograms or
like
digital. So I'll have to really think of something very different for what I see it now. And I actually sit on the Arizona Opera board of directors, and I said, I think the future of opera could be something that's done in something like the Sphere in Vegas, and it's transformed into something totally new, because it is a bit of a dying older piece of entertainment, but I think we could transform that into something that is on this level of the Sphere, where you can get engulfed into the music, but the sets literally surround you and you become a part of it.
Interesting, very interesting. Let's dive into the architecture a little bit. Maybe get us a little bit of a background on how you got started, what sparked your interest as a kid growing up. During the time, Frank Lloyd Wright, that was kind of the mid-century modern, where a lot of people, got interest in architecture from. Like, how did you get hooked to architecture, and at what age did you know that's kind of what you want to do?
Yeah, sure. I could remember back to 6th grade, and back then used to do field trips in Chicago, and we did go to the home and studio of Frank Lloyd Wright in Oak Park, and I didn't know what an architect was. I didn't quite know what they did and what that meant, but I remember walking into the playroom in that house, and if you remember that, it had this barrel vaulted ceiling with these low windows, and I walked into the room and like my hair stood on end, and I was just like, oh my God, like it was just like a moving experience for me. And I just said, I want to create spaces that make people feel that way. And, of course, growing up in Chicago, it's the architect's dreamland. It's the city that, has really created the greatest architecture, and the fire that occurred there, in the 1800s is really what sparked that, because it was like this new boom of architecture that was being created there, different from all the other cities in the world. And so growing up in a city that has so much great love of architecture, really was ingrained in me, and set me on my path very early on, at that 6th grade age.
And then walk us through it. So that was kind of your moment where you knew that that's what you wanted to create. So fast forward, when you finish school, what happens next? Yeah,
the path is actually pretty amazing. If I had known then, how great this whole thing would have laid out. I didn't. It just sort of doors opened at the right times. But all through high school, I had a 4-year. They had a 4-year program of architectural drafting, so I was actually doing drafting in high school. Then I went to Iowa State University afterwards, which had a really amazing program. It's a 5-year degree program in architecture. In my 4th year, I did do a Rome study program. It ended up being their first now, which is now a 30-year award-winning program. And that changed my life. I thought I'd just be like a suit and tie guy working in the city of Chicago in a big firm, and that changed my whole outlook on what I wanted to be. So when I graduated, I moved to London because I just needed to get back to Europe, and worked with Terry Farrell Architects, one of the top London architecture firms. And AutoCAD was brand new at that time, and I knew AutoCAD. So I was the cool kid in the office with the American accent that knew AutoCAD. It was like the craziest thing. They paid me a fortune, and I had an amazing time. Forbes magazine at the time had said Arizona was the #1 state of growth, and I probably didn't even know where it was through college, and I just upped and moved here out of nowhere, got accepted to the Arizona State Master's Program. First day here at the program, I met with an instructor named Jack Peterson, who put my whole path together, and no relation, but it was just amazing that his name was Peterson. And I said, I'm going to need a summer job, and amazing, he tells me that he was a principal at Taliesin Architects at Taliesin West, Frank Lloyd Wright's legacy firm, and he would give me that position. And that was it. It changed my life from that moment on, and I started working the firm that year in 1996, and on original Frank Lloyd Wright projects, sitting in an original Frank Lloyd Wright building with people who knew him and worked with him sitting around me. And then that path sort of set me in motion to work there for a year. And then I worked for an apprentice firm, H&S International, for 7 years while I got licensed. And then I started my own firm in 2002.
Yeah, walk us, that was going to perfect transition. That was going to be the next question. So you then you took that leap, you started your own business. Like what was that like, and how was it in the first years to start a new business and then trying to establish yourself and again being the new guy with the new name type thing, right? With your own shop. Like how did you grow your business, and what were the challenges and the exciting parts about it?
Yeah, it was not something that always came to me naturally. I was very shy. I was the guy behind the scenes. I really wasn't the guy in front of the scenes. Even in the drama department, I wasn't the guy out in front of the stage. I was behind the stage. And I really felt like my position as a number one to somebody was the best. So Bing Hu was the principal of H&S, and I felt like I was in a really great position being his number one person. But he was the person out front, and he was the person getting the work and running the business. And circumstances just changed, and things happened, and I was led to leave there and kind of start my own path. And it was very scary. Those first years, I kind of just sat at my desk kind of with my pencil and was like, okay, like let's see if the phone rings. But the funny thing was, and I didn't know it because I had no business sense at the time, that 2002, 3, and 4 were absolute boom years. It was just craziness here. And Bing had brought the firm at H&S to be one of the top firms in the city. And I was known as his number one guy. And so as soon as I left to start my own firm, words quickly spread, like, hey, this kid's out there, let's use him, let's work with him. He'll probably be better priced than H&S, faster. He'll be aggressive because he really wants work. And I found myself within 6 months with a couple of employees, 6 months later with 4 employees, 6 months later with 8 employees, grew really, really fast. And, it was exciting because I started getting some of the most amazing projects that were in the state. I get Randy Johnson's house during this time period, 25,000 square feet, amazing opportunity for a young kid starting his own firm, great press. I had some really amazing local entrepreneur business owners that came to me and said, listen, we know you're getting started. We want to be the clients that put you on the map. And that meant so much to me. And these people, who were clients became friends and became the people who had faith in me and put their money on the line, their designs on the line to entrust me in doing their projects. And that put me on the map. And, it just came from really developing amazing relationships, never saying anybody is beneath me, from a civil engineer to a mechanical engineer, to where some architects just treat these guys like consultants. They were friends of mine, and some of my biggest clients came from these relationships. Like, I'd say, oh, where did you get my name? And they'd be like, oh, I know the mechanical engineer that you work with. And I'm like, oh my God, that's amazing. That these people all stuck up for me and referred me projects that became some of my most iconic work.
Yeah, follow-up question on that. So now you kind of did the same thing again, opening up Beverly Hills. Probably arguably one of the biggest and most known markets in the world. How's that experience to kind of start over again and being the new guy in town again, and walk us through how that's going and what made you do it?
So, I guess once I started to, once I got the business going, I got that bug, that entrepreneurial bug, and then I got aggressive with getting projects, and you get that energy going, and it's really exciting. You get those jobs, and then you want the next job, and you want the next job, and it was very important to me to become one of the best and one of the known, and the reputation really is something that's very important to me. And as I grew that here, and years kept passing, and we created something really special here. When you turn 50, you kind of hit that moment when you go, okay, I've kind of created something and I've done something, and is this it? Or do I have it in me one more time? And, I sat with my wife and I really thought hard about it and said, I could kind of cruise control as one of the top architects in the Phoenix metro area, or do I take this another level? Do I make another move? And as I started to talk with people, they said the place to be, the place to make a move is Los Angeles, especially where we're located here. It's sort of an easier move than Chicago or New York. And I started putting feelers out there, and I really have faith that if things are meant to be, that those doors open. And as I just started dipping my toe into that market, every door that needed to open for me opened, and that really led me to believe that this was the right path. And in a very short amount of time, we've been open there 5 years. Now I have 4 employees full-time, and some of the greatest relationships now have been built in that market, and we're on like amazing iconic projects already, like the old Montage in Beverly Hills, being rejuvenated as the new Mayborn Hotel, and we're the architect of record for every project there, and iconic projects like Shutters and Casa del Mar. And it just feels really good to be in a new market in a short amount of time and have some of the most key iconic projects in our wheelhouse.
Plus a lot of synergies, right, between Arizona and California.
Tons,
anyways, right?
especially now. I mean, after the pandemic, so many people have been leaving California, coming to Arizona, so that works very nice for us. We're now in the Texas market as well, Park City, Utah, as far north as Whitefish, Montana, and down in Cabo. So we pretty much see the things within about a 2-hour flight from Phoenix is our area of expertise, and we use Scottsdale as our headquarters, and Beverly Hills as a really boutique design satellite office for us.
Before we talk about the projects, or one of the projects that we've been doing with you, I want to go back to when you started your business. I mean, obviously being an architect is one thing. Starting your own business and running your own business is, I mean, those are completely two separate worlds. Have you had anyone by your side initially that supported you and actually showed you the realm? I mean, you need attorneys, accountants, you need an office. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it. How did that come together when you made the decision of actually starting your own business?
Yeah, it's extremely difficult. I mean, architects are typically and mostly artists, and so we don't have that business mind. We're not typically entrepreneurs, and I believe the American Institute of Architects has a figure that says 1% of the architects who go out on their own actually make it, and 1% of those architects that make it are actually what you might call wealthy. So it's extremely difficult. Most of it comes from the fact that we are artists, and we tend to make difficult decisions or wrong decisions that are because we're passionate about something but not thinking about it financially. And when we're asked to do certain things, we're so excited to do them that we may not even ask. It's hard for us to ask to get paid, and that impacts a business decision mindset. So you do have to surround yourself with people that are able to do the business components, the legal components, so that we don't get ourselves in trouble. And that first few years, things were just going so smooth. And I was rapidly at 30 people, which is a pretty large firm to try to manage that type of revenue to pay for those resources. And, here comes the recession just barreling at me, and I had no clue. Like, I just always knew that the projects were coming, and I had no fear. And when things started to collapse during that time period, I really had no understanding of what that meant or what it could have meant for us. And we went way too far, a year in without making any cuts. And then it was just drastic. It was literally one day, just, half the firm had to get laid off, and downsize your space, and the realities of what your decisions make coming to, to fruition. And it was scary, and so coming out of that, that really taught me some real lessons. And I was lucky enough to have some people around me that could help me through that and really give me some hard business advice really quickly. And then I knew coming out of that a whole different way of looking at things, a forward flow that shows me where revenue is coming in every single month, 6 to 9 months out, so I could plan in advance. And ways of looking at things like mostly businessmen do that I wasn't doing. And so that was really probably a really good thing that happened at a really good time, even though it was really hard at the time. But it set me in motion for the long haul.
Like learned it early kind of thing.
Yes.
Yeah, we see it a lot. Like we always talk about it too. There's so many people that, especially when they're like artists or something that they're really good at a certain thing, but not necessarily business people, that, you know, they tend to stay on their own for a long time because they don't know the business side of it. And
Yeah.
But you already said, like, you know, it's more like an artist if you do architecture. That's obviously what I do a lot. So to me, it's interesting. Like, talk about like some of your like most memorable projects, maybe your biggest. Like, give us some like highlights of your career on like, you know, special projects that instantly come to mind that were like sticking out.
Yeah, you know, I mean, certainly Randy Johnson, and within that first 5 years of my career was a big deal for us because it really put us on the map as a firm that could handle something that big. But shortly after that, we got the Ritz-Carlton project in Paradise Valley, and Marriott is who hired us on that one. And again, this came to us because a civil engineer that I had been working with and became friends with literally had my card sitting on his desk. And when the Marriott decided to bring on an architect to do the whole master planning process, they called him and they said, who do you recommend? And he just kind of looked around and he looked down and he saw my card and he goes, call Eric. And so to get a call like that, you know, that early on with that major of a project was really, really exciting for us. And we were on that for over 10 years, put all the entitlements in place on that and set that project in motion. Shortly after that, we got the Wigwam Hotel with Jerry Colangelo and JDM. That was really important for me. I mean, that was a major iconic hotel, and to work with Jerry Colangelo, who's really made such a change on the economy in Phoenix, and to be one of his people, you know, and he really brought me in, and you know, and basically he says, you know, you do right by us, your family, and he held true to that, you know, and he has brought us in on numerous projects, and he's just been a great mentor and a great friend over the years, bringing us these, you know, great projects. That project brought us out of the recession. It brought us that status that we needed to take on all the other projects that we got, like Pebble Beach. I mean, to get the, you know, the iconic holy grail of golf clubs and to leave our mark on something so iconic at the Historic Lodge. Again, just, you know, and that came as a referral from Jerry Colangelo because he's a member and had a house in Carmel, which then brought us back to here and working for Bill Marriott at the Camelback Inn to do, you know, the ballroom that became one of the first ballrooms in all of Marriott's work that had that type of a design, which eventually led us to working for Blackstone at the Biltmore Hotel, which was at Frank Lloyd Wright, Albert Chase MacArthur. And to hit that at 20 years of my career, you know, it really comes full circle from that first day walking in Frank Lloyd Wright's home to working in his studio to working on a hotel and leaving my mark there. I mean, this you can't write a book that's really better scripted.
Yeah.
I mean, technically, the question is too early, but I mean, what's next? I mean, it sounds like accomplishments. You know, I mean, is there anything that you see for yourself where you're like, that's gonna be my next level?
Yeah, that's the scary part, right? You hit 50, you kind of like hit that point where you're like, that's an amazing career. Like, just at that point, anybody would have said that's it. Like, you know, close the books, you're done. But for me, I really keep seeing the next chapter, and really Beverly Hills was about that sort of next chapter. I've really hit a lot of the goals faster than I had expected within my career path here. And I think what Beverly Hills can do for us and our firm takes us to that next level, puts us at that next jump, and taking on the type of projects there, the complexity, the world-class level of work that's being done there will open up new opportunities and new doors for us. And I talk about it as the Oprah house, but that's really kind of where I put it is, you know, when you're in that sort of a situation and you get a house that, you know, Oprah calls and says, I want you to do a house for me, you're in that next level. You're at a world-class level where everybody is now going to know about you. And I think that's what the Beverly Hills market is going to do for us. I think it's going to open up a point where we're going to be able to get that Oprah type house that puts us at a whole nother level.
Are you open to another location? And if so, where would that be?
Yeah, so we're toying right now with Park City, which we have a number of projects up there. It's really becoming a new destination, and Dallas. Yeah, so Dallas has really also opened up the expansion there with so many people leaving California and going to these other markets. Austin is another really great market. We don't have a lot of work there right now, but I'm hearing a lot of buzz about Austin, which is very, very similar to Scottsdale, and it's, I believe, even a sister city to Scottsdale. So the two that are most ready to go because of the amount of work that we currently have in the office is Park City and Dallas.
You obviously do hospitality, commercial stuff, residential stuff. What's the percentage of your business in each of those areas, and then what do you enjoy more? What's I'm sure you enjoy both, so otherwise you wouldn't do it. But is there something where you like, can get more creative in residential, but commercial, like the big scale? Like, what are the pros and cons of each, and like how much business do you do in each?
Yeah, great question. We really were set up as a model prior to the recession, 100% high-end residential. After the recession, understanding that I needed to diversify both in type of work and location is where I had a new business model to do about 50% on the boutique commercial, which were golf clubs and hotels and restaurants, and then the high-end residential, and in location from Texas to California, so that we wouldn't ever get sort of caught with all our eggs in one basket. So that had been the model up until COVID pandemic, and it really shifted. The golf, we had certainly become one of the top golf club architects of the West, and with everybody suddenly becoming members at all of their local golf clubs across the country, with, golf clubs were infused with money, had 15-year wait lists, and the phone started ringing off the hook. And so we've sort of pivoted a bit to about 70% on our golf club work right now, and a little bit of the boutique hospitality, with the Mayborn and the Biltmore being really strong components of that work, and then the residential taking on the rest of that. We're set up to pivot back and forth on that, so it may change at another point. But I am really enjoying the hospitality aspect of it right now. I mean, being able to touch something like the Biltmore is at a different level than a custom home. You affect so many more people, and I could go there and be walking around the hotel and just see people's enjoyment and see the excitement that we bring to so many more people, and that's something that's really exciting for me to see. The golf clubs that we're on are some of the greatest golf clubs in the country, if not the world, from Brook Hollow to Colonial in Dallas and Fort Worth to Riviera and Palos Verdes in Los Angeles, and the Quarry and the Reserve in Palm Springs. I mean, these are some of the greatest names in golf, and that also is very exciting to have access to these clubs, to be in the clubhouses, on the courses is just something that's really, really exciting.
I remember the golf club, clubhouse work that you've been doing during COVID. That's where you got a big spike. Because I remember we were talking fairly regularly on the phone, and everybody was like, "What's going on with COVID?" And you said, "Okay, obviously you have the overall staff is smaller, but that department, was blowing up." And you were back and forth, I think, between here and California, right?
Yes.
At the time, a lot.
Yes.
So
we opened about 2 years before the pandemic, and then we had really established ourselves nicely out there and had some good projects. And then 2 years of COVID was really tough with California because they were in a much higher lockdown than Arizona was. So while we were continuing to work fairly regularly here, I would fly to California on completely empty Southwest jets, and the LAX was completely empty. And, you know, I'd go through empty streets to our office in Beverly Hills, and, you know, where we were continuing to work, and construction was still considered essential. So all the contractors were still working, and we were still providing them drawings, but it was a very different scene in LA, where here it felt a little bit more normal.
So yeah, we've known each other now for 3-4 years, and we had the honor to collaborate with you on one of our recent projects in Paradise Valley on 53rd Street. Can you give us a little bit of an insight on the design process and what kind of particularly you like the most about that house? And then how's it even working with two German guys?
Well, I mean, I think right off the bat, we instantly hit it off. I mean, I just like to have fun, and I like people who respect the process and respect the design inspiration. And I think we quickly saw like minds. I saw an energy and a passion in you guys that was really exciting. And so like I'd throw out ideas, and you'd quickly come back to me with like great ideas, and I'd come back another great idea, and you were like, let's do it, you know. And I like that energy that, and you were willing to push the limits. A lot of spec developers are a little bit more safe. They want something that's a known product that, okay, we just need to do something that's going to sell well. And so many times I've kind of gone down that road, and it's like, come on, just push the limits. It's going to be really exciting. And there's a nervousness on the real estate side, like, well, we got to reach as many people as possible. We don't want to limit. And that puts you in a little safer mode. And I love the fact that you guys were willing to take some risks, and even take some risk with me. I mean, we're not the cheapest guy in town. There's a little bit more that comes with working with a firm like us, but you were of that attitude that it's worth it because you get the better product, you get the better name association, and it puts your product at a higher level than anybody else because they see you associating with the highest end design possible, and there's a payoff for that.
I think that was a huge learning for us too. I mean, we have the Moonlight Project too, which Max and I always say, like, we could have sold this house probably 15 times in the last 2 or 3 years. Like, it's we just talked about that referral that you know just called you the other day. Like, that came from that house too. Like, it's not finished yet, but it's already, everybody talks about it for years. We get calls like, it's under contract, but is it coming back? Is there any way that might not? So I think there's definitely a demand for, you know, stepping it up a level. And Max and I have been like following the market closely. We actually think it shouldn't be just a step up. I think Arizona can go 2, 3, 4 steps up, right? Like, and now you're in Beverly Hills, which as Europeans, that's a market you know, that's, you know, known worldwide. You see all these like Beverly Hills, Hollywood Hills mansions, and then you compare to a lot of the product that you see in Paradise Valley, including stuff that we've done that are nice spec homes or nice custom homes, but there seems to be still a big step up to some stuff from out of state. So what do you think is not missing, but what can Arizona do more and better on the build side as far as finishes and you know, maybe going outside the comfort zone to, like, you know, step it up a notch?
Yeah, there's been huge progress already made within the last 30 years for Arizona. I mean, we're I think the 5th largest city in the country now. So I think in a way we need to start acting like it, you know. This has been a bit of the Old West for so many years, and you know, when I first started practicing here, there wasn't a lot of high-end architects. It was really a builder's place. It was a second home market. People were coming here and wanted that old Adobe feel. They wanted homes that felt like it was Arizona. They had Native American rugs and colors and patterns and that.
We just sold one of those with masks on the wall.
Yeah.
So we know.
So I mean that look, that feel, it was pretty much builders just building whatever they wanted with a couple of drafting services that were providing the drawings. And the mentality was this was a second home. It was a vacation place. They were spending 2 months out of the year here. There weren't very high-end communities, and there certainly weren't HOAs and high-end architects. And so the development of the better communities, started with Lyle Anderson at Desert Highlands and then Desert Mountain, really started, 35 years ago with bringing on a next level of architectural design and requiring that there are, key architects that understand design principles that are working in those communities. That upped the game. That allowed architects with great training and better builders to start learning from the work that was being done in California and start bringing that work here. And so that has evolved over the years with communities like Silverleaf upping the game, DC Ranch, and that has then led into places like Paradise Valley that don't have design guidelines. But now, certainly, Paradise Valley and Phoenix Hillside codes have jumped up even more difficult with any of the homes that are being built in those areas require such a high level of design, thought, and execution that it does require, architecture level training to get through that process. Otherwise, it's years and years and years of trial and error, with unsuccessful attempts of being able to get your project approved. So I'm really excited to see where we've grown in so long and that the level of sophisticated architecture has changed here, and we're away from that old Adobe kind of a look, and we've got really cutting edge modern architecture that is world class here, and we have developed world class architects that are from Phoenix, and I think that really is going to help with putting us on the map and making Phoenix live up to the number that it's at currently.
Do you have one of those next level high end residential projects currently in the pipeline? And if so, is that something you can talk about?
Yeah, unfortunately, it is crazy with the big homes that we do now, and that's a little bit why, to even tap onto your other question, which I'm enjoying more. It's like we love doing homes, but they've become so much more of a private entity. And many of our clients, especially after the pandemic, and especially in Beverly Hills, we're not able to discuss projects. We're not able to share projects. When they're done, we can't photograph them. We can't get them published. And that's been a bit of a change in, people used to be really proud about their projects, but things have changed now. And, wealth is a little bit more of a private factor, and we have to respect our clients' wishes. And so we do get on some really amazing projects and some really amazing clients, but in the end, we're not able to share a lot of that. But we do have great projects. We continue to do some really big homes in all of our different markets and locations. We get inquiries by great sports stars, and it's always fun to kind of dip into their lives for that amount of time and work with them.
You talked about like design and that we have like cutting edge modern. We talked about the mid-century modern, Frank Lloyd Wright, that you kind of came from. Like we obviously also as spec builders, you try to be a few years ahead of the market, right? You don't want to build now what might not be the thing in 2 or 3. I feel like we've seen modern for a while, and we see on the agent side, because we have those close networks, we see more and more the request for client looking not modern. Like that, like 2, 3, 4 years ago, it was always client only wants modern. We start to see at the end of the buyer need not modern in capital letters. Like, what's the next thing? Like, where do you guys look for inspiration, maybe in Europe or in other places? And what do you think would be the next design, maybe? And it's obviously a guess, but what do you think is going to change in 5 years from now, where people are going to look back and say, that was the modern time. Now we're in the You know, is it going back to transitional? Is it going to Santa Barbara again? Like, what's the next design, you think?
Yeah, great question. And that's always what we're always thinking is, what is the next thing? The nice part is Arizona tends to always follow LA, and LA tends to follow Europe. And so as LA sort of has the first look on this, on whatever the new look is or the new trend, we're going to have that initial look at it prior. And so we hope what we could bring to Arizona is a faster take on whatever is new. Surprisingly, mid-century modern has been the one thing that has stuck and is constantly in everybody's wheelhouse as far as what is a great design. And I think the reason for that is that there's a bit of a timelessness to it. There was comfort, there was texture, there was great color and materials, and it is something that everybody can relate to. You know, there's the hard contemporary, which is very limited, and you know, it could be cool, and architects tend to love to go that way, but it's hard to get everybody wrapped into that. We like to say, you know, we do a really nice Southwest contemporary that is livable, and it has a lot of the mid-century modern parts to it that is timeless. We typically tend to just describe our work as timeless. We want something that's going to feel really good and really comfortable, not too hardcore contemporary, not too hardcore traditional. I do think it needs to fit its place, so something designed specifically for Arizona is going to look different if it's in Beverly Hills. Our climates are different, our shadow sun control is different. So it has to be something that just can't be picked up from Beverly Hills and plopped in Arizona, or vice versa, or even Park City. And so it's regional to where it is, but for us, it's a lot of the principles that goes all the way back to Frank Lloyd Wright. You know, it's about creating spaces that are about the human body and emotion and spatial feeling, that are comfortable in volume and bring that emotion, make your hair stand on end. And you know, there's a memory that I go back to when I was with Taliesin Architects. We did tour a bunch of homes, and we were able to go to a house in San Francisco, and the original client who worked with Wright still lived there. It was a woman. She was in her 90s, and we said, what was the inspiration for the house? And she recalled that she's a dancer, and she told Mr. Wright that she wanted a house that she felt like she could dance in every day. And then she paused, and she almost kind of teared up, and she says, "To this day, I dance in this house." And we all, like, our hair stood on end, and we were just like, that was it. I'm like, that's what I want to do. And I think, you know, it's not necessarily a style, but it's that feeling. You've created something that makes somebody feel like that, no matter what it is. That's what does it for me. That's what I want to do.
To your point, like, too, like, those mid-century modern also seem to be one of the few houses that do not get torn down regardless of lot value. Like, you know, there's like the Goldstein residence in LA. That's, you know, stuff you wouldn't do today, but nobody will ever touch this house. I mean, no, not that he donated it to, I think, to the what was it, the Architecture Committee of LA or something.
Yes.
So now it's not going anywhere, but those houses are not getting touched, and that's where we're like, okay, there hasn't been really anything since the mid-century modern. It's so, like, nobody's going to touch this house. A lot of stuff we built now, we're like, probably going to get torn down in 20 years from now, and they'll be like, oh, what did they do back then? Everything was gray and white, or, you know. So that's why we're always like, okay, what could be the next thing that really is going to last because it's so specific or something? Is there anything that you have in mind that could, like, what architectural features would be included in something that you think could stand, you know, the test of time?
Yeah, it's difficult. I mean, I sit on the Frank Lloyd Wright Foundation board. I'm part of the Frank Lloyd Wright Conservancy. I'm part of a group in LA called Saving Iconic Architecture. These groups all are around because even some of the most iconic homes in the world get torn down. There's there is love for it. I mean, we just came off Modernism Week in Palm Springs, and thousands of people flock to Palm Springs every year to see these homes, and it's
How
like a
was it?
pilgrimage.
Was it good?
Yeah, it's
We were
they're
thinking of
amazing.
going,
Oh, it's
but
just
we didn't end up
incredible.
doing it.
It's such a fun event. You get to see homes that are like a pilgrimage, that you go and you see these places, and you just are so excited that they're still around. And you mentioned Frank Lloyd Wright. We were at the Frank Lloyd Wright Twin Palms estate, and they're just magical, right? And they touch you in a different way, and it allows you to see what life can be rather than just in regular square boxes, And that is the true sustainable home, something that can stay around for a long time. So I don't get really hung up on style. I really think that style, like just to name something or to label something, is a little bit misleading. I just think it has to be a home that really touches everybody. That, like, there's certain homes that the whole community just feels is an important part to the community, and it was designed with the intent of not only the homeowner but also to what it means to the entire place that it's in. So those types of homes, I think, and it changes from Park City to Beverly Hills to San Francisco, and I think that those are the types of homes that we need to continue to do. And I think it's because great architects, developers, builders are putting these homes together, and the best teams put together the best homes that become beloved, and therefore they last the test of time.
Interesting. Okay, so it's not really a style, right? Because we've been seeing some of those, let's just say, modern Mediterranean, like softer version of like modern homes. We also see some more like estate type homes that it's not really the farmhouse of Arcadia, but it's more like a Hampton style interpretation of like an estate, which I find super cool and super interesting, right?
They're beautiful.
So I think that we're always just trying to see how we can differentiate ourselves also with the product. The influence that we have from Europe, as you know, and Florida, and our teams across the country. I think we're trying to pick the best of everything and then just combine it into something that's just different,
I think, the Norwegian design, that area of the world has been known right now as probably the greatest design center, because they really are looking at things holistically, both on a health aspect, on a community way of life, on materials, sustainable. They approach things very differently there, and I think as far as a leader of the greatest design happening in the world is that Norway, Sweden, that whole aspect of where design is coming from, and it's sort of underrated. I don't think everybody's really paying as much attention, but they have attributed to a healthy lifestyle and a longer range of life to those areas directly related to the design of the buildings and the lifestyle that they've created, both in some ways communal type living, where young to old all live in similar in communities surrounding each other, but also in the way it's being designed, the connection to the outdoors, which has been proven to help things like brain cancer and loss of memory when you're able to see out a window every day and see trees. These are proven facts that can be integrated into every single design today. And so I think it's just knowing that this is the truth and that these are scientific facts that we should follow, that design does influence. You look at movies like 1984, where everybody was in these, horrible square, buildings with that horrible fluorescent light flickering, and everybody was like a zombie versus the realities of what great design can do. We have to learn from those things and take design to another level and know that it impacts our every single day lives.
So you touched on sustainability. How important is sustainability when it comes to your designs? And let's just maybe gear that question towards high-end residential, because we obviously see a clear difference between Europe and the US, so specifically Arizona on that end.
So, I mean, we're obviously regulated on an energy component. So all of the things that we do by code have to meet certain energy requirements. And all of the projects that we do and the materials that we use are certainly meeting that goal. As it relates to sustainability in a more holistic approach as to materials and such, it's really difficult to indicate that on a 25,000 square foot house or a 30,000 square foot house for two people who are going to live there, 3 to 4 months out of the year, that makes any sense to try to claim that we're doing something eco-friendly or sustainable. So in our minds, sustainability really means that we're doing really good design for something that doesn't get torn down every 20 years. And unfortunately, there's so much of that being done, and we've seen it, where homes are just sort of a temporary and the lot becomes more important than the home, and every new person who comes along just pays and rips down a house and rebuilds it. But if that house was done in the right way, in the right sense, that is more timeless and allows flexibility in numerous owners, that then becomes sustainable. And so we look at it in that mindset. We talk to our clients and advise them to make decisions that are more sustainable over the course of the life of the home versus the life of the client. And that helps with that. If we do something that's just so specific, we know that as soon as that client leaves that house, it needs to be completely removed. So trying to make those decisions, speak to them and educate them, that becomes then more sustainable than just doing something that, LEED certified type projects are more, for government type projects because they need to meet certain sort of political objectives. But for homes at a high-end level like we're talking about, it's hard to get there except for the fact that we sort of lead them down the road of thinking more timeless in their design.
Yeah, we obviously compare to Europe, to Germany, like when we say there's certain standards here, I mean, I think the best house in Arizona probably barely passed the bare minimum code in Germany or in Europe, right? Like
sure.
Energy efficient, like every house has an ID that tracks all their, sustainability ratings and efficiency and everything, and it's affecting value of homes. You can't, a 20-year-old home, you had massive price drops because you have to put hundreds of thousands to updated heating and cooling systems and everything. So I think Arizona for sure, America probably in general, to your point, looking at Europe, that's probably going to come. But the other question that I have, because we talked about, some like aspects from homes in Europe versus America, the livability, like homes here, like every house we build now is 6, 7, 8,000 square feet. Like nobody buys an acre in Paradise Valley here and puts a 3,500 square foot house in it anymore.
Right.
However, in Europe, that's very standard. Like barely any house is bigger than 4,000 square feet almost,
yes.
Right? Like even the high-end, super expensive homes, they're maybe 300 square meters, which is 4,000 square feet, not even. So how do you think that's going to keep going? Because, 20, 30 years ago, homes here were 2,500 square feet, or even smaller. So where's this going? Is it going bigger? Is it going to somewhat start stopping? Do you think it actually is going to come down to make it more livable and more sustainable and more efficient? Like, what are your thoughts on that? Because that's been just going one way right now.
Yeah, it's interesting. It might have been stabilizing a bit prior to the pandemic, but after the pandemic, we're certainly seeing another spike in home sizes increasing again, because what's occurred is they started getting smaller because people felt like they don't need all of those things in their house. They don't need the gym, they go out to the gym. They don't need the theater, they could go to because the theaters were getting so great. So all of these things started to leave the home. And now the pandemic suddenly started everybody freaking out again and like putting all of those things back in the home, especially the workplace. And, we used to do homes with one office, and now we do homes with two offices because each of the spouses needs their own place to work because work from home is so much more prevalent. And now we need bigger bedrooms. We used to have like a homework zone, but now every kid has to have their own space and their own room because of the Zoom calls. So every house is going back up again, getting bigger. Theaters are moving back into the home. People don't want to go out to theaters. And now the home technology, you could have an IMAX in your home. We're doing one right now. It's our second IMAX in a house. I mean, that's really kind of insane to even think about. We're doing basketball courts inside. We're doing indoor pools. We're doing tennis courts. I mean, all of these things that used to go out to do, people want them back in the house again. And so they're becoming huge complexes. And that's in reverse of where I thought the trend was going. Maybe we'll hit that again and it'll change over again, but I see the trend going back large again.
And I think one of the things that we see on our end, obviously acquisition prices and availability of lots, that just has significantly changed. And then if you look at the highest and best use out of a financial perspective on the development side, I mean, you almost can't afford to build small. At the same time, though, like Patrick said, Moonlight, for example, we're just at a little over 5,000 feet single level with an amazing view of Camelback Mountain in a gated community. Not only we could have sold that house 10 times over, but it does come with a premium if you're in that jewel box segment, right? But again, looking back at what we purchased a lot for, and when we purchased it, we couldn't replicate that anymore, right? So I guess that's also something interesting for us to see. We kind of have to build big to make sense with the numbers,
Other than when you find amazing lots like that, they're sometimes smaller lots, and then you just have to do what you need to do, and they're used for that type of a purpose. But when you have so many people coming from California and they've spent on a very small lot $10 million, they come here and they could get 1 acre or 2 acres, even though, prior to the pandemic, you might have been at about $1 million an acre kind of a price point here. And now we could get $5 million for an acre. And that's cheap to somebody coming from San Francisco. It really changes the way we see things. And, back, 10 years ago when we got to $1 million an acre kind of a number, that was really exciting. And, that's an extremely cheap amount compared to pricing in San Francisco acreage. So that mindset's crazy to think of, that somebody would come over here and what we build here for 1,000 a square foot would cost 2,000 a square foot to build. Like I mentioned, I'm very much still into Frank Lloyd Wright. I am the Conservancy group meets once a year in different cities around the country, and I really enjoy taking that time for myself to go to these different cities. We have lectures about Frank Lloyd Wright and what happened in the specific city that we're in, and we go see many homes and buildings that are typically not open to the public. To me, that's really exciting. It sort of fills a pot for me that, is something just very much true to me. And as I also mentioned, I'm into opera, so I do enjoy, I've got sort of a little bucket list of seeing every major opera house in the world, and I'm slowly going through that list and making sure that I could get to see these great places, and then also able to go to some of these great golf clubs that are the iconic clubs around the world and experience that.
Have you been to Augusta?
No, but I'm going this year. I was able to get the golden ticket, and I will be there with my son, this is just an amazing experience that's been offered to me, and I can't believe it's going to happen, but we'll be there on the Thursday and the Friday, and it's just going to be a really special experience.
It definitely will be. Yeah. We went 2018, and I mean, I played golf my whole life, but it definitely is an experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. We always ask the same question kind of towards the end. Like, what kind of advice would you give yourself, talking to a 16-year-old Eric, like, how would you prepare yourself for life and business and everything? Like, if you could sit down with yourself, what would you say?
Yeah, and the nice thing is I mentor students both at Arizona State, and I just went back to Iowa State last week to do the same, and so I do have that opportunity to sort of tell myself to these kids back at that time period, and I tell them truthfully what I would have told myself is to really focus on getting that business experience and legal experience so that I'm prepared to do the things that I was doing today. I don't really enjoy relying 100% on others to help me on that business advice. I really wish I had that as my main foundation. Knowing that I was so artistically talented and architecturally talented, I don't feel like I was well served doing 5 years or even 7 years of that education. I would have been so better served taking even 2 or 3 years of business. I should have majored in business and minored in architecture. That would have set me on the better course of where my life ended up. But of course, back at that time, I didn't have that entrepreneurial spirit. I didn't think that I was going to be running one of the top firms in the country. So it's hard to know. I really thought I was just an artist and I'd be working for somebody. And maybe that's the bigger advice, like set bigger goals. Like, don't just sell yourself short. Don't just think that you're something lower than the potential that you could become.
So I think that's a good way to wrap it up, Eric. Thank you so much for coming.
You.
This was amazing. We appreciate you making the time. And where can we find your projects, social media, website, so we can put that in the notes?
Great, thanks. Yeah, www.phxarch.com, and then our Instagram handle is also phxarch.
Okay, and we're obviously going to include all of that in the description below.
Great.
Classic for Alan. We always got to say, make sure to subscribe. Again, follow Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, all over the place, and share with everyone. Thank you again, Eric. And,
Thank you.
See you guys on the next one.
Thank you.